Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Persephone, and today what I'm presenting you is the list of books that I'm bringing to Paris. Those are only two of the books that I have today, but all of them fell from my lap, and I do not want to be in this Sisyphean sort of torture and pick them up and then have them fall, so it will have to wait. But for context, I'm actually Parisian. I come from Paris. I was born there. I lived there most, if not all, of my life. But I am currently in America. So I have to fly back to France. The only issue is we have a weight limit, and I'm staying there for a whole year, and none of my belongings are there. So it might be a little complicated to bring my entire bookshelf. I'm bringing around 7 books. That's the sort of limit I have fixed for myself. And of course, because of this limit, I have decided to pick some pretty nice copies and pretty thick ones too. So the first book that I have in hand is a collection of tragedies by Shakespeare. It's a rather old copy. I think it's from the 60s if I'm not mistaken, but it's a copy that I found in an old bookstore. I mean, it's an old new and used bookstore by the beach, and it is a copy that I think I will cherish forever. It has one of my preferred features, and it's not the sprayed edges. Also, it's so strange, but the sprayed edges are only on one of the edges, not the main one, which you would expect. A little note that I found in between the pages, and that is my guilty pleasure, finding old notes that I am definitely not supposed to have found. I mean, this is probably something that was dedicated to one person and not the entirety of the universe, but here it is. It says, Bill, this book is hopelessly out of date, but it will give you an overall idea about this organization. Excuse the markings and notes. It's extremely interesting because I have no clue what organization it might be. Maybe it's a secret Shakespeare Society, which I would have loved to be a part of. But what's even more curious and mysterious is that there are no markings on this book. I have looked through it, and none of the pages contain anything that could be considered a marking. So maybe it is something that has been inscribed in ink that can only be read under UV light, but that will remain a mystery for now. So, going back on the original program, I have decided to pick this book because it's the tragedies by Shakespeare. Tragedies are my favorite type of plays. I can appreciate a good comedy, especially if it's by Shakespeare, for instance, or more so Molière, one of my favorite French playwright. But I suppose tragedies have that feeling that I appreciate the most. This idea that life is leading you towards a certain point, and avoiding fate is something that will bring you to fate a little closer. It's a long story. I don't necessarily agree with the idea that we only have one fate and that we cannot escape anything that is supposed to happen to us, but it's still an interesting thing to see in literally media or maybe even in movies, TV shows, etc. So I have decided to take this one. A lot of them I have already read. That's a given. I mean, I have read a lot of Shakespeare before, but some of them I have not. Regardless, I am going to make the most out of this book, and I think that it being a whole collection instead of the individual ones that you can see right there. It's on my bookshelf. It's my husband's bookshelf, but those ones. And I cannot carry all of them, and that would be an expense that would make little to no sense, especially when such a beautiful copy exists. And I got it for only $10, which I think is quite a steal. The second one I decided to take is a book that I have acquired, I think, 2 weeks ago when I went out with friends, and it's East of Eden by John Steinbeck. It's a book that I have been wanting to read forever. I used to have a French copy that I have misplaced somehow. I actually do not know how a book can disappear, but it happened with another book. It happened with The Myth of Sisyphus. I also had a French copy that completely disappeared. I had an English copy that I misplaced too, I think. I think there was a curse on this book and it just wanted to be read when the timing was right, which it was 2 years ago, I think. But I had a French copy of it, and the issue is that I realized that even before misplacing it, that I would have rather read the book in English in its original language, and so I am extremely happy to have gotten this book. And it's also for a specific project or video idea, so I'm really excited to read it. The premise of this book is biblical of sorts. It's not a retelling per se, but it is heavily inspired by the story of Abel and Cain. I am not Catholic myself nor Christian, but I do love the symbolism that is associated with it. So this book will be an interesting read. I also love books that tackle multi-generational either trauma, which might be the case, but more so stories and the way that our ancestors' history has influenced ours in some way or another. So this book will be a journey I am definitely willing to take, and I will be able to tell you more about it once I finish it. The third book is actually Russian literature, just like I love it. I cannot have a season without reading at least one masterpiece from Russian literature, be it modern or a little older. So I have The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky and a French edition, actually. I am not fluent in Russian. I have perhaps learned half of the alphabet one summer just for the fun of it all. But this copy I have acquired near La Seine in Paris, and it was also for €10. So I think there's something about very beautiful old copies being around $10 or €10. Also, the pages of my book are yellowed, but in the nicest of ways. You know, when you find an old book and it has the scent of an old book. I have read Crime and Punishment last year, which I enjoyed quite thoroughly. I read it rather slowly, not for a lack of enjoyment, but more so because I wanted to prolong it. There's also this feeling of doom and despair that lasted quite a bit in the book, and that I couldn't shake off my bones, and so I needed to have a little break with more lighthearted literature, which might be found on this shelf. I have also read Notes from the Underground, which I loved, but there's an attachment, a specific attachment that I have to The Gambler. Maybe it was because it was recommended by my beloved philosophy teacher, and I read it in a time period where I started to devour literature in a very serious way. I'm looking forward to reading The Brothers Karamazov because I knew it would be a book that I would only really enjoy after reading some more of Dostoevsky's work. So it feels like I'm more of an advanced Dostoevsky reader. And that gives me the right, it qualifies me to read The Brothers Karamazov. About Russian literature, our third work will be The Master and the Margarita by our beloved Bulgakov. This is a book. I am looking at it because the cover is so incredibly beautiful. I think it's the 50th anniversary edition. I'm going to read it for a specific project too. I used to have the Penguins Classic edition, but apparently the translation is not as good as this one, so I acquired this one with the hopes of having an excellent translation. Now, onto the fifth book of the list, I have Ada or Ardor by Vladimir Nabokov. I have read Lolita 2 years ago, I believe. I have enjoyed the writing. The storyline is actually something I abhor for obvious reasons. I have a little anecdote about Lolita actually. I was around 18 and I stopped at a cafe. I was sitting alone and having a coffee, and this old man is, I mean, old, when I mean old, I mean decrepitly old, around 80 to 90 years old. He was sitting right next to me, and I was just peacefully reading my book, minding my business, not talking to anyone, and he just looks at me, turns around, and tells me something very cryptic, like, are you enjoying this book? I said, yes, I really am. I think it's a masterpiece, although the storyline is rather difficult to read. He looks at me and he tells me, I think it is a very important book to read, especially for a young woman. I mean, everyone should read it. With this very insistent look that could mean only one thing. It was rather peculiar, and I would not, as an old man, if I were an old man, I would not sit next to a young lady and tell her about how this book should be read by every young woman. It's a book that I have seen, I think, in high school. I had a classmate that was reading it and I thought it was extremely interesting. It does deal with rather complicated topics like incest mostly, um, but it is considered to be, as the fourth cover says, it is considered to be Nabokov's longest, richest novel, and it is a love story, but also a fairy tale, a historical parody, erotic satire. So it has all the qualities of the writing, and it has the questionable topic that Nabokov really enjoys having in his books. It's going to be my third read of Nabokov's, and I am looking forward to it. I am looking forward to feeling extremely uncomfortable too. Enjoy the feeling of having a candlelight right near me. We won't mention the fact that the third one is not occupied. Just consider those two. I really enjoy the feeling of having them close by. The only issue is that it turns my cheeks extremely red, but it's worth it. The aesthetic and the picturesque is worth everything. But this is the main list of fiction books that I'm taking with me. I have two nonfiction books that I have added to the collection of books that I'm taking. The first one is Against Interpretation and Other Essays by Susan Sontag. I have heard about On Photography. This also heard about Against Interpretation. It is apparently an extremely interesting book with perspective that I perhaps will not share. I mean, that is the point of essays, opening yourself to the world and to new horizons, and I hope to be enlightened, and maybe my review will figure in my substack. That's a possibility. It is Persephone of Alexandria if you wish to follow. Against Interpretation will be the subject of an interpretation of mine. So you can look forward to that. I am already going against the wishes of this author without even having read her essay. It's my last book, another nonfiction book. I have decided to take with me Empire of Pain. This is a book about the secret history of the Sackler family, and it is about the opioid epidemic. And I'm not from America, but I am currently in America, and I have seen the pernicious effects of opioid and the way that they are prescribed in America, and I believe it is also applicable to other countries. But I am extremely interested in seeing the perspective in a book that is extremely well researched. I mean, the bibliography is rather immense. I have never seen such a long bibliography on a nonfiction book, which is rather impressive and should be the standard, but is not. I have lied about the number of books that I'm taking. I said something around 7. It's 8, and I have a bonus book that I'm bringing with me, but it is not a but it is not a book that I have not read. It's actually a book that I have read before, and it's Mémoires d'une jeune fille rangée by Simone de Beauvoir. English title is, I believe, Memoirs of a Dutiful Daughter, and it's a book that I cherish with all my heart. It has opened my eyes on multiple things. It has made my life in high school more bearable, but I am bringing it with me as emotional support, and it is the sort of book that I would just open a page of and find an excerpt that I already love. The page contains something that is precious in some way or that I have an emotional attachment to, so it is the additional book that I'm bringing. This is the conclusion of this video. I have quite a few books that I'm bringing, me respecting the weight limit will be achieved only by me not taking any clothes. But this is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.